Some unlikely allies are bringing the AI fight to Google's doorstep.
Welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk all things Apple, various technologies, humanoid robots sometimes.
My favorite.
Yes, I love the humanoid robot talks. And then AI, which is what we're getting into today. I think in large part, AI is changing so many things and so many industries into the future. But it is really interesting to see how Google has dominated the search space for so long. And now that AI is becoming a thing, even though Google is working on it on a large scale, a lot of companies are achieving similar results here. And we're kind of seeing search get replaced to a certain degree by AI tools. And that's kind of what we're getting into today. So if you're enjoying these videos, we appreciate you watching, and consider subscribing if you haven't yet. We're doing these throughout every week. So first up is something we've talked about in previous videos, but we're going to get a little more deep on, is OpenAI announcing Search GPT. And technically you could link this to Microsoft a little bit because Microsoft has backed OpenAI, but Copilot uses OpenAI, correct?
It does, yeah. Copilot is GPT. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this definitely aligns with that. But essentially they announced Search GPT, which is its own thing. It's invite only right now. And the idea of this is that it will, quote unquote, replace search.
Cool. Sounds good. Here's where I'm at on this. There are certain things that people search for a lot that a large language model is massively better than Google at. And I think people are going to start discovering this more and more, and Google knows this.
Yeah.
Right? And you think of Google's overall traffic, like during the day, right? Most the things that are actually driving a ton of value in ad spaces for Google are searches that are like, how to tie a tie, how long should I boil an egg, like these kind of, like, I don't know, basic day-to-day knowledge that people just encounter and need to know. That's Google's baseline. That's their bread and butter, right? Like very few people, whatever, like looking up the, whatever, who was the fifth emperor of the Byzantine Empire or something, like that's not, that's not driving a lot of money for people, right? So GPT and LLMs in general are a direct threat to that model. Google knows this. That's why they're developing Gemini. Here's where I think something like Search GPT, maybe even things like Perplexity, Copilot, anything, Apple Intelligence, whatever you want to call it, have a little bit of advantage over Google right now, and in terms of how they're doing the search, right? Because Google, and we've talked about this, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. And then right now, if you search for something on Google, you're probably going to get 3 to 4 different types of answers. And what I mean by that is that you'll get maybe not, and it's more and more likely you're going to get a Gemini AI response at the top, right?
Yep.
Next thing, you might get the Google questions about this block thing where you can like thread down and see questions people ask about that. You're probably going to get some kind of sponsor results in there. You might get, they do the little, it almost looks like little like cards. They're websites, right? You might get that. You might get the card for video results for that. Somewhere in there, if you're lucky, you might get actual web search results from what you're looking for, right? It's very far down.
Yeah.
So they're kind of just blasting everything they can at you when you do a search. Now, if I'm on GPT, let's use at the beginning, how to tie a tie, right? I can go how to tie a tie in ChatGPT in the app, right? So I'm not going on some website. My results are not tainted by a million different things, right? It gives me instructions, and then I can continue that conversation in an intuitive, natural way.
Yeah.
I go, whoa. Actually, I'm in a bow tie. And he goes, oh, no problem. Switches to that, right?
Yeah.
And you go, oh, you know what? I want to make a Windsor knot today. Sure, no problem. Here's that, right? Like you can keep having that conversation, right?
Yeah.
And keep having that conversation in multimodal ways, right? I don't know if I used right now the kind of DALL-E-based generative image thing to make steps for tying a tie, but I think that's coming. That's going to be there, right?
Yeah.
So, and I can do all those without having to deal with all Google's clutter, without seeing any ads. And again, I can do it in a way that's so natural,
Yeah.
right? That you're almost, have to break your brain a little because we're so used to kind of hacking Google to get the results we want, right? Like
adding Reddit to the end of the
adding
search.
Reddit to the end of the thing, adding
like you learn how to use Google.
Yeah,
like,
no, people search and like people have techniques for like getting the things they want from Google, right? Like I don't know how many times I want like a transparent background of something, so it'll be like Apple logo PNG or something, because it'll give you those results. All LLMs really and LLM search stuff breaks that in a way that is much better.
Yeah.
Now, flip side of that, maybe sometimes it'll tell you to eat glue or rocks or whatever. Although that was Google, to be fair.
Yeah.
But, all LLMs hallucinate in some kind of ways. But for things like those examples I just gave, right? How to cook an egg, right? Like I love that you can keep asking it those questions, keep having that conversation. It comes out natural.
Yeah.
It sounds intuitive. It's just really, really good. And that's something that I think Google should be concerned about.
Yeah, definitely. You talked to me about basically using GPT instead of Google a lot. And so I tried that this week when I was writing a video, and it was for my Tesla channel. And in the past, I've tried using GPT for like the full use case of like scripting or like writing, and I never like it. It's never good. It's always, you're trying.
It's a bad way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I did instead is did it like Google, or did information, or like name me 20 things that fit this category of something. Like I think it was like hidden costs of buying a Tesla. And I already have a lot of ideas, but then it's just rattling off 20 to 30 and I just say more. And I'm filtering through tons of bad things that I'm like, oh, that doesn't really work. But I'm seeing a lot of great ones. Then it's like, oh, I didn't think of that. And then I can just say source.
Yep.
And then it attaches a source and gives me the links. And I've also noticed, the ability to return single results. A lot of times it's like I'm searching for a specific video that I know. It's one video, but obviously I don't know the link off the top of my head. And so I would have to type that into Google or YouTube. And instead I say, give me the link to this video from this event, gives me the single link, and I click it, as opposed to a bunch of results that I'm clicking
It takes away all that work from navigating a search. And like you're saying, like, it's great as an assistant, right? Like I agree. If you tell it to like make a video script, I don't think that's gonna be a very good script.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be a passable script. I think most content, it's gonna write it like most content is written, which is terrible, so it's doing what it's been trained to do.
Yeah.
But I like that you can use it for something like that, gathering data on things that seem kind of obscure, and then you can tell to organize that data in a way that's good for you. I had this weird thing. I got super into Greek mythology this week for some reason.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh, what are some works of art of Greek mythology that are cool? And it's like, oh, here's a list. And I'm like, oh, it's dope. And I was like, hey, can you tell me ones that are local in LA? And it goes, okay. And I go, hey, tell me ones that are on display. And he goes, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
And I go, tell me of those museums, which ones are open right now? And he goes, here you go. Right. Like it's like, oh, that's, that kind of like drill down.
Yeah.
It's like get exactly what we want, happens in a cool, natural way that, destroys Google. And I say that, look, I could get all that same information from Google. It would take me 15, 20 minutes, maybe less even. Let's say it even took me 5 minutes. Right. That's a lot of time for something that I can have that quick that whole conversation lasted, less than a minute.
Yeah.
And it gave me exactly what I needed.
Was the place open? Did you go?
Yeah, it was LACMA. Yeah, it was great. Yeah,
nice.
When I saw a thing of Prometheus there. Yeah, it was cool. So
okay, so it didn't hallucinate.
It didn't hallucinate.
You didn't show up without.
No,
the
It gave me LACMA, and Griffith Observatory has all those like paintings in the kind of dome area and stuff. Yeah, so it gave me like great examples of where to go to see those, which I thought was really neat.
Yeah,
because Griffith Observatory is kind of a big place, a lot of stuff there. And it goes, oh, the thing you want to see, walk into the main entrance, go to the left, and you'll see it. And sure enough, like that's where it's at. It's like, it's super cool.
That's awesome. So speaking of GPT, we were talking about how Copilot is essentially GPT. Bing is now integrating Copilot, and it's up there right at the top. So you can just click this button on the side of your search result and go into Copilot and ask questions. And should we give this a try for a couple of results right now?
Sure, if you want to, yeah.
So we're going to go right into asking this some obscure questions. So I'm on Bing. I'm going to click this guy. What's a deep cut movie question that is a tough answer for Google or Bing?
Name a movie that used a split diopter lens.
Ooh. How do you spell that?
Diopeter. Diopter. Well, if it's good, it'll figure it out, right?
That's true. All right, here we go. Copilot is generating. Certainly a split diopter lens. Okay, we got that. Benefits, examples. 1947 film. Modern potential. Wait, was it Dark Passage? Starring Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah. I was thinking it was going to pick Citizen Kane's probably a famous example,
So now I'll say what's another one.
Yeah. See if you keep asking.
The Graduate.
Oh yeah, The Graduate uses it several times, very famously. So that's these are correct answers. Yeah. The Graduate uses it a lot when you see Mrs. Robinson and see Dustin Hoffman. So
Blowout.
I don't know if it uses one, but so far it's been right, so I'll believe it. But yeah, that's an example of that's kind of that's an obscure thing to ask it, I guess, and it's getting it.
That's very quick. Yeah. This looks great.
It seems very snappy too. Mm-hmm. Bing seems pretty fast, man. Like I was like, oh,
I reached my conversational limit for today, though.
Oh, are you signed in?
No.
There you go.
All right. So if you want to try it out, you only get 3 or 4 questions before you have to sign in. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the search front this week, definitely a very interesting thing is that a huge part of Google's core business is obviously search, and then making sure that is the default search on different devices. The reported number that they pay Apple every year is about $20 billion to be the default search engine on iPhones. And actually, I mean, it's been a number of years now, but I remember when it was the only search engine option within Safari. But that is now changing because of antitrust. It seems like Google is probably going to have to retract and no longer be paying Apple that fee and no longer be getting that advantage. And in turn, we could see things kind of change in that regard. It'd be a little more, just a little easier or a little clearer that you have different options to use Bing or use any of these other search engines. And also, I think these other search engines are going to get better thanks to AI, and we're going to find that Google's kind of that jumbled thing that we're seeing right now versus you could have a cleaner experience elsewhere. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on Apple essentially? I don't know. They're kind of maybe being forced into this, but it seems like they might take this as an opportunity, like a launching point to kind of change their strategy, maybe get into search because they're doing AI. What do you think?
They're not gonna get into search. That's crazy. But I tell you, there's been rumors that Apple has experimented with its own search engine and thought about buying like DuckDuckGo or things like that. I don't think they're gonna do that because search engines and all apps are going away. Mm-hmm. like the future of this is how this is gonna work, guys. You're in Safari or whatever, and you hit up the top to search, or the URL bar, that kind of universal bar right there, and that is going to immediately go to an LLM of some type.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to do. And I don't know how Apple's going to implement it or which version it's going to use or what it's going to do, right? But if we use that example of how long to boil an egg, I type that into the search bar in Safari, it probably immediately will feed it to a local LLM to give me that answer, right? Because it's going to be an everything. When I say the end of apps, what I mean is AI is kind of like an everything app doorway into other things, right? Mm-hmm. So I can go from there and I can ask it a question, boom, it gives me those results. I can imagine it being integrated in a way that, you ask directions or anything like that, or where things at, like it just all runs it through an LLM. And then when it needs to, it goes, if I ask it something more obscure, what movies are using split diopter lenses, right? Maybe it tries to answer it right there, or maybe it goes, hey, I bounced this out to Google Gemini to get these answers for you, or just Google search, here's the results. Or what it'll likely do because of antitrust stuff, it'll go, hey, I searched the web, here's the results from Bing, Google, and whatever, Alta Vista, Ask Jeeves, I don't know, whatever else it wants to do on the end there. I think that's what we're going to see it do, right? Yeah. Is that it's an LLM is filtering all that and then giving you hopefully closer to the results you're trying to use without it actually just automatically using a search engine.
Yeah, which I guess could arguably be Apple entering search, but they're entering search because search isn't going to really be a thing anymore.
Right.
It's Apple Intelligence that they're replacing it with, and then however that farms out to people. And maybe that's how they're going to replace that $20 billion per year. They're going to be like, okay, well, pay us GPT to be the default if the Department of Justice doesn't care about that. Or they'll figure out some way to where it's like, every ping that you get, we get a percentage of that, because there's going to have to be money exchanged at some point down the line, because these things take just so much money to develop. And speaking of tons of money to develop, Meta, they're working on Llama 3 and Llama 4. And I think Meta's kind of one of the ones a lot of people forget about. We hear about Google all the time. We hear about GPT for sure all the time, OpenAI. We're definitely hearing about Apple. But yeah, I don't really follow Meta stuff, and I don't think I really use many of the AI tools that they have. Have you played around with these?
I've messed around with it because I co-host this podcast with you. I don't think I ever.
So you're responsible. I'm the irresponsible
Yeah, I guess.
one.
I
for
actually
not.
prepare before I show up, guys. It's weird because it lives in a weird place. It's in the kind of search section of Meta products, so
Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And that's not where I want to go to use an AI to begin with, right? It's like, what is it doing here?
Yeah.
I don't think, it just doesn't seem like natural and a good place to go. I have only used it very anecdotally. In those times, I will say it didn't seem as good results from the type of things that I use AI for. Maybe, different AI is better for different things. So we'll see where this goes. I will say, I think the bigger story here is that, unlike say Gemini, I'm pretty sure Llama is open source. So I think which I think is why you see Llama, you can use it in like ChatRTX, which is NVIDIA's platform, things like that. So I think that's kind of maybe a more interesting part of this to me. But we'll see where this all goes. I suspect a lot of these companies that are making these investments right now are going to start to throttle back on them at some point when it starts to be clear that it's cheaper to pay a licensing fee to OpenAI or whoever and use their stuff than it is to develop our own.
Yeah.
But Meta's got money to do it now, so cool.
Yeah, apparently $8.5 billion was spent on capital expenditures in
nice.
Q2 of 2024.
Nice. Well, is the same company that didn't they spend like $50 billion on the metaverse when they pulled the plug on it or whatever, or
Yeah, that's
scaled back on it, whatever they did. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we talked about that in another video, but it's these companies have this much bigger way of throwing tons of money at something, hiring tons of people, and then backing off and completely just doing mass layoffs and all this stuff. So even though Apple may not be spending more or around the same, they're spending less, they potentially are doing it more efficiently than these companies. But we'll see, because Meta they have all their Instagram and Facebook data still coming in all the time from people. They have so much on everyone.
Oh, they get to scrape a bunch of stuff because they own a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like unlike, say, Apple, that's going to have to license that from a bunch of sources. Between Facebook and Instagram, they can a ton of information that they are scraping right now. It wasn't that long ago that they updated the terms of service on Instagram specifically. I know this made a bunch of artists and stuff mad because they're like, "Hey, we're using your stuff," and I was like, "Well, these companies were using this anyway," but now you're just like officially locked in with the terms of service.
But if you post one of those screenshots on your story that says "I don't consent," that works, right?
According to every weirdo conspiracy person I know, I think 100% is. Those people have never been wrong about anything. So yeah, totally.
Yeah. Speaking of Meta, they're now working on celebrity voice AIs or AI voices, and this is something we saw OpenAI have a lawsuit with because they tried to do Scarlett Johansson's voice, and then she didn't want to do it, I guess, and they didn't work out a deal, and then they just basically did it anyway and hired an actress that sounded like her, and then they've had to retract. So now they're over at Meta, they're actually working on AI voice assistants, but they're with celebrities, and they're actually working out deals with them that it seems like it could be a better thing, like it's actually valuing the celebrities. They have certain rights they can pull out of things. But yeah, we got Judi Dench, Keegan-Michael Key, and Awkwafina. They're among multiple, quote, actors and influencers whose voices could become part of Meta AI's offerings.
Like Keegan-Michael Key would be pretty funny, just giving you results, but he's like doing like his over-the-top kind of guy, you know? Yeah, some guy from Key and Peele, you know, like really extreme guy. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but this is all just rumor. These people are attached to it, right? Like, I don't think they've actually like signed anything on. I imagine there's some hesitancy, and we talked about this in another video, how anti-AI the art world is. It's probably some hesitancy to sign on for this. This is some weird niche inside of niche story here, but Comic-Con just happened the other weekend, and Colin Kaepernick was there. And he's got this company that's going to make like AI comics. So he's like trying to promote it. And like all the creators there were like, F you, dude, get the F out. Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna hit some resistance with that kind of thing. And even though this is not that, but I can see like some artists not even want to be associated with this at all. But this has been around for a while. Do you remember like TomTom GPSs? Like in-car GPSs, right?
Yeah.
You could get other voices for them, right? Like you get like Harrison Ford or Snoop Dogg or whatever it was, right? And so it's like, so this kind of thing has been around for a while. Now it's just to the point where you can actually synthesize that voice really effectively, really cheaply to do almost anything.
Yeah, and have it say whatever you want.
They
didn't have to say the words before.
Yeah, exactly. You can make it say whatever you want. And it will say, you can already, if you want Judi Dench to say something to you right now, you can go on 11 Labs and train a model with her voice right now. Anyone can do this.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, passable for most things. And people have been using it to scam people, all kind of stuff already, right? So if this comes out, cool. I guess we'll just see. I imagine if Meta backs up enough money, I can see we're going. Yeah, man, go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, take my voice.
Yeah.
But reportedly there are temporary contracts, and then they'll have the option to re-up as the term ends. But I think people always have the fear that they'll somehow circumvent that, and people will already have used their voice and retrained different things to where it's just a nightmare of celebrities' voices being all over the place.
I think about the joke they make in Deadpool and Wolverine like a bunch of times. He's like keeps going, you're going to do this till you're 90, right? And I mean, Disney already has 3D scans of Hugh Jackman and everything, so they literally could just like keep making Hugh Jackman movies in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Which I feel like this is another one of those things, like we just need laws. We need laws to sort this out.
Yeah. I will say the celebrity thing is interesting, but also not that interesting to me because, like, for instance, Speechify. Have you heard of Speechify?
Yeah.
I use Speechify quite often now because I have it read articles or read different things to me, and I tend to absorb information pretty well that way, and quicker. And one of the voices is Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's like AI powered. So it's basically this, but it's like I don't care that it's Gwyneth Paltrow at all. It happens to be a good voice.
No, and back to those, like when you could put the celebrity voices on TomTom, it became annoying more than anything else. I don't know if like you kind of do it as a gimmick and then like, oh, I'm gonna switch back to the other voice.
Yeah,
right?
like I don't need Ron Swanson telling me to turn left.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, come on, like.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So this week we got a lot more info. Seems like Google. If I were at Google right now, I'd be a little concerned. But we will see. These companies aren't technically partnering, but they're all kind of doing the same thing in different ways to take down Google.
Good luck, guys.